Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, we finish up the two-part series with Dr. Roger McEowen on the top 10 ag events that affected agriculture going through the judicial system. We'll also have features from Kansas Soybean, Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Kansas Grain Sorghum, along with the weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com. In agriculture news, the smallest beef cow inventory in the last 50 years, coupled with the historically strong demand, has now led to the highest average fed cattle and calf prices in 2023. As reduced cattle numbers and beef production continue over the next 3 years, leverage and profitability will continue to be in favor of the cattle producers. Despite record prices, expansion will likely be delayed once again. Now, lingering drought, high input costs, limited labor availability, high interest rates, and market uncertainty all serve as headwinds against growing the cow herd. The current cattle cycle anticipates slower and more prolonged expansion, with heifer retention causing a supply chain decline with expected lows in fed slaughter by 2026. Now, higher cattle prices and reduced feeding costs will continue to improve margins for cow-calf producers for the next several years, as much needed improvement to drive expansion as weather patterns allow, that according to Cattle Facts. Now, after several months of El Niño's influence on the global weather pattern, meteorologist Matt Makins says that El Niño event that placed moisture on the south and southeast is fading away, and La Niña is showing signs it could make a rapid return. By the way, cow and bull slaughter is forecast to be 6.5 million head for 2024. That's down about 800,000 head from 2023. And Cattle Facts also predicts feeder cattle and calf supplies outside of feedlots will be about 1 million head smaller than 2023, 24.1 million head. Commercial fed slaughter in 2024 forecast to decline by some 750,000 to 24.8 million head. And after about a 1.3 billion pound decline in 2023, beef production expected to be down another billion pounds in 2024, total about 25.9 billion. The decline in production in 2024 will lead to a 1.7 pound decline in net beef supply, 56 pounds consumed per person. Mike Murphy is Cattle Facts Chief Operating Officer. He is forecasting the average 2024 fed steer price at $184 a hundredweight, up $9 from 2023. All cattle classes expected to trade a bit higher. Prices expected to continue to trend upward. The 800-pound steer price expected to average $240 a hundred, with the 550-pound steer price expected to be at $290 a hundredweight. And USDA says most farm loan borrowers are now able to make loan payments online at the Pay My Loan feature at farmers.gov. The Pay My Loan is part of a broader effort by the Farm Service Agency to streamline the process, especially for producers who may have limited time during those busy times of the year of planting and harvesting, and also maybe have a hard time visiting the local FSA office. On average, USDA centers process more than 225,000 farm loan payments each year. The Pay My Loan gives most borrowers an online repayment option and relieves them from traveling to their local service center. We'll take a break, come back with Dr. Roger McEowen when we return to the Kansas Ag Report. The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. And joining us once again is Dr. Roger McEowen, the Ag and Tax Law Specialist from the Washburn School of Law. Thanks, Dr. McEowen, for sticking around.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think you're about the only one we ever stick around because there's always so much good information. But what we're doing is we're going through the top 10, the way you have ranked agriculture, going through the legal system. We're going to do a quick review to get to this point. Last week, we did 10 through 5. 10 was the entire commercial wind development. There was order removed in one facility. Reporting foreign income was number 9. Number 8, a new corporate reporting requirements. 7 was a prison sentence for 5 people involved in $1 billion bio tax fuel conspiracy. Number 6 was self-employment tax and limited partner situation. And number 5 was a Corps of Engineers mismanaging water levels on the Missouri River. So we have the last 4 left. Let's go to number 4. This had to deal with the employee retention credit, or the ERCs.
Yeah, what a mess in 2023 was the ERC. And this, you may have even yourself personally gotten an email or a text from a group that was promoting the ERC saying, you're entitled to this credit, why don't you file for it? It got to be such a problem, Ken, in 2023 that the IRS shut down completely processing of claims for the fourth quarter of 2023. They just couldn't keep up with all the fraud. And so to just stop that, they just stopped all claims, even legitimate ones, and ramped up their enforcement efforts. What this is a program that Congress created during the virus years with the intent that they would try to help employers monetarily with an incentive to keep their employees on the payrolls. And so they created this retention credit. It can be a massive amount. Largely, farmers will not qualify for this because, one, you had to have a shutdown by a government order. Well, farmers didn't shut down, you keep working. And then secondly, if that wasn't the case, if you weren't ordered to shut down, you had to have a certain amount of decline in revenues. Well, those years were actually pretty good for a lot of farmers. So revenues went up, and then IRS said the supply chain issues are not a basis to claim the credit upon. So a lot of farmers were misled, and now we're dealing with a voluntary disclosure program. IRS is providing amnesty to people if you did receive funds and now you just figured out that, oh, I shouldn't have done that, that you can come clean with no problem. So this one lingers into 2024, but massive fraud, and just affected the whole sector of the economy.
In 2023, agriculture made several appearances at the highest court, the U.S. Supreme Court, and one of those is your number 3, and that's Prop 12 out in California.
Yeah, this is the case where California came up with some rules in 2018. Their legislature passed a law that said if you want to sell pork products, as well as other types of meat products, but the case we're going to talk about focused on pork. If you want access to the California market, then the pork must be raised, the hogs must be raised in a fashion that comports with California's rules. And if you can't certify that, can't establish that, then you can't sell pork products in California, which is a big deal because they have about 13 or 14% of the national market for pork, even though they don't raise hardly any pork. So their rules don't affect themselves. And the Supreme Court said that the parties challenging that, the large pork organizations, failed to state a claim on which relief could be granted. So they dismissed the case. It was poorly pled under the Commerce Clause and the Dormant Commerce Clause, and so the rule stands. There were some judges that would have sent it back to the trial court for a trial on the matter, but here it is. Here we are, and so some justices and myself also concerned about what other states could do in reaction to that. So watch this to play out even further on other issues between states as we go forward on economic commerce issues.
Dr. Roger McEowen from the Washburn School of Law is joining us. This is our second part, looking at the top 10 issues from 2023 of agriculture throughout the legal system. We'll take a quick break, back with more, and wrap it up in just a moment. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com. Dr. Roger McEowen from the Washburn School of Law, the Ag and Tax Law Specialist, is joining us yet again this week as we're wrapping up his top 10 list of agriculture through the legal system in the courtroom for 2023. We're now down to the last two, and these are two big ones. Number two, foreign ownership of land. Now, if this hasn't caught the attention of almost everyone, I don't know what issue has.
Right. It was huge all across the country in 2023, and it was kind of a continuation from 2022. But numerous state legislatures, as well as the Congress, either proposed rules or enacted rules. And then we had a couple of court opinions in 2023, one in particular involving the Florida statute, which the court upheld as not a constitutional violation of various rights that were asserted. But this is a big issue because of obviously high profile issues in recent years, particularly concerning actions of China, the flyover of a spy balloon in 2023, certain acquisitions of land near military bases. That's really put it in the public's eyes and has brought it before the attention of numerous state legislatures. And in my article behind this, I talk about the states that took the action and proposed significant legislation in 23. And there are a lot of those. And the Florida statute, as I indicated, is probably the most aggressive, along with Arkansas. And you had the governor actually require divestiture of some foreign-owned land. So expect this issue to continue in 2024, but it was certainly a big one in 23.
Well, and number one is probably the bigger issue, even than foreign ownership, and that is waters of the U.S., another one that made it all the way to the Supreme Court.
And here we are again for about 50 years, this issue of what is a WOTUS and what is the government's jurisdiction over navigable water of the United States found its way back to the U.S. Supreme Court in a significant opinion, in the Sackett opinion, which was decided on May 25. And basically what we had was the court going back to what the Trump era rule was with respect to the definition of a WOTUS, and moving away from this adjacency definition and requiring a continuous surface water flow from a wet area to an actual water of the United States, a navigable water of the United States, as that is defined. The case involved a couple from northern Idaho that had a lot that they wanted to put a house on that was about 100 yards from a navigable water of the United States, from Priest Lake. And all 9 justices said that's not a WOTUS. Their lot is not a wetland subject to Clean Water Act jurisdiction. And we got this new test that kind of takes us back, I think, to the original intent of what the Congress was doing back in the 1970s. This will be challenged. I don't think this issue is over, but we do, I think, have more clear guidance as to what the definition is than we've had for quite some time.
Okay, Dr. McEowen, there it is. There's the top 10 list of what you have seen as in your order of significant events, agriculture throughout the legal system. So folks who want to review this even a little further, we were able to get to, and other things that are working their way already into 2024, how can folks find them?
Keep track of these by reading my blog, which is accessible off my website, which is washburnlaw.edu/WALTR.
All right, Dr. McEowen, we look forward to talking with you again next month. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
Dr. Roger McEowen for the Washburn School of Law. He is an ag and tax law specialist. He joins us every month here on the Kansas Ag Report. We'll take a quick break. Back with more coming up in just a moment.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the soybean checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
The 2022 Census of Agriculture dropped this week. The National Agricultural Statistics Service prepares this report every 5 years with the cooperation of farmers and ranchers across the country. In addition to providing a comprehensive picture of agriculture in the U.S., the Census of Ag serves as a key data source in developing many policies and programs that directly impact operations. In the broad scope, the census reported over 1,900,000 farms, a decrease of about 150,000 from the 2017 release. Those farms represent 880 million acres with an average farm size of 463 acres. The definition of a farm, according to the report, is any place from which $1,000 worth or more of agricultural products were produced or sold. Nationally, 270,000 farms reported growing soybeans across 84,599,000 acres for a total production of over 4 billion bushels. All of these figures trended down slightly from 2017. In Kansas, 12,411 farms reported growing soybeans across 4,570,000 acres for a total production of 116,679,000 bushels. These numbers fell from 2017 data, but it is important to note seasonal stresses during the calendar year of data collection. The reference point is the calendar year for crop production, sales, and farm-related income. Kansas reported a total of 56,734 farms with a median farm size of 164 acres. The census identified 103,387 Kansas producers, with most operations having one or two producers. 65% of the state's producers are male, 35% are female. The average age reported for Kansas is 58.2, with 62% of respondents aged 55 and older. More cropland acres in Kansas were rented or leased than were owned, and most respondents reported having a primary occupation outside of farming. The report also details information about other crops, livestock, farm pavements, farm income, operation demographics, and more. All of the information is available at nass.usda.gov/ag-census.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
New Year from Kansas Grain Sorghum. I'm Maddie Meyer, here to provide you with the latest Kansas Grain Sorghum update. While we are always celebrating the leadership and hard work of our growers, I wanted to take the time to congratulate a few individuals for their dedication and time they served with the United Sorghum Checkoff Board of Directors. Shane Supis of Scott City has just completed his tenure and was recognized for his role representing Kansas at the annual national board meetings last month in Lubbock. Congratulations are in order for him. I'd also like to recognize our Kansas board members, Kendall Hudson of Little River and Kim Baldwin of Inman, for being named chairman and treasurer respectively of the United Sorghum Checkoff Board. David Shem of Sharon Springs was also sworn in as board member, replacing Shane in the Kansas seat. We can't wait to see what they accomplish this year. The National Sorghum Yield Contest results have also been announced. Congratulations to the Bibb and Niswanger Partnership of Comanche, Kansas, for winning the Irrigated West Division with a winning yield of 218.64 bushels an acre. Kansas was also well represented across the other divisions of Dryland Tillage West and Dryland No-Till West. Finally, I'd like to give a reminder that registration for the Kansas Commodity Classic is still open. This year's event will be held Friday, January 26th at the Salina Hilton Garden Inn. If you're looking for a one-stop shop that provides updates and outlooks on markets, weather, and insight from farmer leaders, then Kansas Commodity Classic will be an event you don't want to miss. For updates and more information, be sure to follow the Kansas Commodity Classic Facebook page and website at kansascommodityclassic.com. We look forward to seeing you all there.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Kansas legislative session is now underway as the state's senators and representatives are convening in committees and as large bodies to hear bills and debate issues that affect the lives of Kansans. This is a busy season for the Kansas Department of Agriculture as we monitor any legislation that would have an impact on farmers, ranchers, or agribusinesses in Kansas. We are often asked to provide background information or testimony on bills that relate to conservation, water, animal health, or other topics of great importance to Kansans. At the start of the legislative session, Secretary of Agriculture Mike Beam meets with the ag committees of both chambers to provide an annual State of Agriculture report, an update on the ag industry, along with the work that KDA has been involved in throughout the past year. In addition, KDA frequently proposes legislation that amends statutes which govern the agriculture industry, so that the state law is current and comprehensible for citizens who are affected by those laws. Often this involves making statutory changes to ensure consistency, reflect current practices, clarify terms and authorities, and provide flexibility where appropriate. Sometimes it also involves changes to fee structures to allow the agency to fund the work of the divisions and programs through user fees. This year we'll be talking about pesticide applicator licensing, the Stream Obstruction Act, and the Kansas Pet Animal Act, among other topics. If you're interested in following along with the 2024 Kansas legislative session, go to kslegislature.org, where you'll find information about legislators, committees, bills, and much more. Most of the committee hearings and meetings are streamed live there and on the legislature's YouTube channel. And please reach out to us at the Kansas Department of Agriculture if you have concerns or questions about any of the ag-related issues that arise this year.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Galen and Lori Fink of Randolph will be recognized February 29th as the 2024 Stockman of the Year. The award is presented annually by the Livestock and Meat Industry Council at the Stockman's Dinner, which will be held at the Stanley Stout Center in Manhattan. Galen and Lori grew up on eastern Kansas farms, learning the importance of sound decisions in cattle judging, business, and leadership. That knowledge, coupled with their passion for innovation, is what built Fink Beef Genetics, a successful seed stock operation that uses technology, including embryo transfer and artificial insemination, to provide cattle that work for commercial producers. Starting by placing embryos in other people's cows, the Finks pioneered this approach, becoming the first in the U.S. to develop such a program. Today, they implant more than 800 embryos per year, host 2 sales annually, and offer more than 600 bulls each year through private treaty. Galen and Lori have served as leaders in many industry organizations, and Fink Beef Genetics has garnered numerous awards. To learn more about the Finks, register for the Stockman's Dinner by going to ksubeef.org and click on Events. The registration deadline is February 22nd. The cost to attend is $50 per person. The 111th Annual Kansas State University Cattlemen's Day will be held the next day, March 1st, in Weber Hall. A detailed schedule and registration information also can be found on ksubeef.org. The early registration deadline is February 23rd.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Good morning, this is Jake with Pinion Risk Management. Grain markets continue to disappoint as we grind along in a slow fundamental environment with a heavy domestic carryout and a large crop being produced in South America. Starting with corn, the ethanol report for the week ending February 9 showed a daily average production of 1.083 million barrels, which is a new high for this week of the year. The former record being 1.04 million barrels back in 2017. This did lead to a significant increase in ethanol stocks as demand has lagged production, with a total 25.81 million barrels now on hand. Exports showed a spot of optimism this week with 51.4 million bushels sold. This was at the high end of expectations and the biggest export week for corn since the first week of December. Soybeans likewise have continued on a downward trend since the middle of November. Exports for the oilseed were on the disappointing end at just 13 million bushels, but on the bright side they remain at 1% above the pace needed to hit the USDA targets. Going forward, we will continue to compete with cheaper Brazilian supplies as they finish up harvesting the first crop in the next few months. Bean meal also hits above the USDA pace. However, bean oil is trailing significantly. In the wheat market, Chicago wheat broke out to the downside of a triangle formation that it has traded in for the last 2 months. Kansas City wheat also fell through some support around the $6 mark on the new crop July contract, on trade optimism with beneficial moisture helping to replenish many areas that had been hurt in the drought of the last few years. Exports for wheat came in on the lower end of expectations for last week, but so far, all wheat is beating the USDA target by about 6%. On the livestock side, both feeder cattle and live cattle have seen a bit of a pullback this week after an aggressive rally seen since December. Cash fat cattle traded this week has appeared around 180, which would be about $2 lower than last week, but comes on the heels of a fast and furious cash rally since the start of the year, largely driven by lower carcass weights. The choice cutout has stabilized in the $290 to $300 range. The lean hog market, has been extremely volatile of late, but is so far sustaining a rally from the first of the year. In outside markets, crude oil remains a solid upward channel as the front month approaches $80 per barrel. The dollar remains strong and the stock market indices are seeing new highs, with the S&P closing over the psychological 5,000-point mark. If you have any questions or want to start working on your marketing plan, feel free to give us a call at 888-452-8751. My name is Jake McCall with Pinion Risk Management, and I hope you have a great day.
That's our show this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Follow along online, KansasAgReport.net, or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on the Kansas Ag Report.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.